Welcome back. We're going to do another episode of really talking to professionals, people that are smarter than me, about how you can transition into tech. Our focus today is going to be on ServiceNow ecosystem. We have our special guest, Justin, who is working on getting connected. He's got to restart his computer, refresh his browser, all that good stuff. But he should be in the room in just a second. So I'm going to give it over to Alex to maybe talk a little bit about what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks and give us sort of a preview of what today's session is going to kind of break down to. So, Alex?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Martinez from Creating Coding Careers, where we help aspiring developers transition into ServiceNow and software engineering roles. So I was thinking about the topics we were covering over this last year, and I believe we had asked pretty much every single guest speaker the same question. How do you break into tech as a newcomer? And pretty much each guest speaker, they echo different variations of the same answer. You got to prove your ability, whether it's web dev or ServiceNow, by building something. You got to show that you can actually use the skills that you've attained by building something, and hopefully something that actually solves a problem. So I started scouring the net, looking for examples of interesting apps you could use using the ServiceNow platform. And I ran into this YouTube series where this person is building this recipe app. So I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so he's using the ServiceNow UI builder. And he has a series where he goes off on how he's doing it. It's like in fast motion, but what it's actually going, he's pretty much showcasing how to do it. But he actually references, I guess, something that's on the ServiceNow platform that actually exists that you could do yourself by following the same instructions. So I see another app, though, or another video, I'm sorry, where he's creating this app where he is using this API to gather pictures. And this is all in ServiceNow. And as soon as he gets that picture, he bounces it over to this AI API using GP3 and asks for a poem that, based on that picture that he just bounced to it. And this poem was like describing this picture like perfectly. So I was already hooked, like, wow, this guy is really, pushing cutting edge type content. So I said to myself, everyone's got to follow this person, and draw inspiration on things that they can build using the ServiceNow platform. So I reached out to him and I asked him, hey, would you be willing to join us and kind of just share your journey into tech and, talk a little bit about what you do on your YouTube channel? And he was all in. He's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's set up a time. So I think Justin is here now. Let me see if I can get him in.
I'm upside down. I don't know.
Yeah, he's upside.
I'm trying to figure this stuff out. My cameras and mic are acting weird.
No problem, Justin. I was just giving you a little intro, telling about your YouTube series.
And, sweet. Thank you.
As soon as we get you right side up, I would love to hear about your background, pretty much how you got into tech, and specifically how you started working with ServiceNow. So we'll let you get situated there.
Sure. Yeah. I don't see any. Do you know of any settings here for the video, or is it all?
I'm not sure. Maybe Mike can help us out. I'm not quite sure exactly what would flip you upside down.
While I'm fixing this, what I do is I use OBS Studio. Normally, it's a broadcasting application. Okay. Twitch streamers and YouTubers use it. So I actually have the camera mounted upside down, and in the software, I turn it right side up. Just because of what's going on here. So
I see.
Let me see. I'm just untwisting it here. I probably should have tried this service before now.
Yeah, no worries.
Clicked off there. There we go. And do things the old-fashioned way with our fingers. There we go.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Justin, for coming on. And again, I'm going to let Alex take it away. I think you guys are good.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. Much better.
Yeah, I'm disconnecting some cords, so almost there. Okay, that's good enough. All right.
We're good to go now. Yeah, so let us know a little bit about your background, Justin.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the intro. I appreciate that. So my background, we'll start with recent, and I'll kind of dive into a little deeper because I was talking to Alex about some topics that I think might be relevant for your audience. But my background right now is I work as a ServiceNow solutions consultant. And that means I'm literally every day listening to people's business problems and trying to find a good technical solution for those business problems. But before that, my journey started off in healthcare IT. I worked for a hospital system here in Asheville, North Carolina. And at that hospital system, I started off as a pharmacy tech. So I had no college degree. I was fresh out of high school. And I overheard some pharmacists talking about calculating insulin doses, or no, nurses calculating insulin doses for patients that the pharmacist had to keep verifying and making sure they were correct. And I overheard it. I was doing something else. I'm like, you could put that on a web page and just have them put in the two numbers, and they can verify their calculation they did with the calculator. They're like, no, really? So it's like, yes, you can, have a computer do this for you. So I wrote it up, and all the pharmacists got out their calculators and tested it. So that was the beginning for me of like kind of writing a program, was just a simple web page. That moved into like EMR support, medication administration support through my career. Then I went to college. I went to a community college and then a university here in North Carolina. And then I got into the traditional IT stack. So like Microsoft and Exchange and SharePoint and all the stuff, you'd support as part of that. So I got to pull in all that knowledge about, running a true data center and what it takes. As that evolved, then I got into the architect space, which led me to IT service management because someone left and they had an old ticketing system. And I ended up replacing that ticketing system with a different system than ServiceNow. Then we grew out of it, ended up getting ServiceNow. Company got acquired, and I went looking for a job and ended up staying with ServiceNow and in the consulting arena. So that's
Nice.
That's my elevator story for how I got into IT.
Very cool. So tell us a little about what we're doing right now. I know you're over there at Cask, and you explained, at least I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it says you actually demonstrate how to solve people's problems using ServiceNow. For the people who don't even know what ServiceNow is, can you give us a brief explanation? There's actually one of the questions popping up from David Opoku. What is ServiceNow exactly?
Sure. Yeah. So ServiceNow is, well, for this crowd especially, ServiceNow is a development platform. ServiceNow writes their applications on their platform. It's a SaaS application, so it's something that businesses will use in the cloud, so through a web browser or through connecting to other apps. And it started off as a ticketing system, so IT service management. I have an incident, I have a request. That was kind of where they got their start, and then it grew into other things. So now they're across the entire enterprise, from HR to facilities to finance, security, legal, marketing, everything. They touch everything. And what's at the core is a platform that runs on MariaDB as its database at backend. And now this, I'm talking about their infrastructure, right, in their data centers. MariaDB, lots of JavaScript and AngularJS. They're moving to a newer tech stack for web applications and stuff. But what they've done, which I think is cool, is they especially for you all, as you're maybe like learning coding and what that might mean, is they've acknowledged that in the enterprise market, that a coder will come in, develop something that becomes mission critical for a business, and then they get promoted, they get, life happens, they move or something, go to another job, and then they're scrambling trying to find someone to support that application that this coder built. And I'm not talking like an application that's necessarily like a Twitter or a Facebook or something like that. I'm talking about a business application that the business uses, so to help the business function. Maybe that's reporting on financial details or tracking approvals for some HR stuff. So these are business applications that kind of get left behind, and it starts to cost these enterprises a lot of money. So what ServiceNow did is they made a platform that lets you go in and start coding and creating that, but a common talent pool to come in and actually support that and continue the development of it. And then now what they do is they're kind of trying to embrace a citizen developer. So meaning the finance department might have somebody that's interested in workflows and writing a little bit of code, but not a lot of code that you guys are probably used to doing. And so they're trying to make it so that you can do that in a sustainable and scalable way by delegating permissions for, okay, here's a template for an application, and then you can go tweak it and change these variables. but you're still in this little sandbox, and we'll promote it to production, then and then it can be used by the business. So at its core, it's a SaaS application. There's development that goes on there, or you can buy it and not do any development, just use what ServiceNow, the company, has developed for it as part of their purpose-built products.
Can you give us an example of maybe you can remember a client coming up to you with a problem? Maybe they're using Microsoft Access or Excel or like the Microsoft products that you mentioned earlier to handle information, and how you came in with ServiceNow and says, look, this is how we could do it better, and these are all the new features that you don't have with the Microsoft product. Like well, can you give us like an example of what that company did or what they do, how they were handling the process before, and how you transitioned them into ServiceNow?
Sure. I have one. I have two that I thought about beforehand, but one that's come up so often lately, and I fear it's going to keep coming up, and that is a company just went through a data breach. They got hacked. Colonial Pipeline, named the company, the meatpacking or whatever it happened last year. This is happening more and more frequently. They come to us and they're like, we have our patches and our vulnerabilities in spreadsheets, and that we're too big, we've got too much infrastructure, or we got too many teams, we're global, and we can't wrap our arms around this, and we can't patch fast enough. So how can ServiceNow help us do that? So there's applications purpose-built for identifying vulnerabilities and saying, hey, you need this patch on this server or on this network switch. And what we do is we integrate that into ServiceNow, and instead of putting a spreadsheet out to a team, we then take that and create a task for somebody to complete and associate a workflow with it. And that workflow can have approvals and verification steps, and kind of facilitate the process and make sure that action is being taken and vulnerabilities are being remediated. So that's the value add there. The interesting part, and I think, Alex, this would speak to what you probably want to convey as a business problem, is when we sat down and talked to one of the particular companies, once we got away from the executives, the teams that were doing the patching, the security teams, the server teams, they kept saying, I can't patch. The server's too old. This application's too old. They had a long list of reasons of why they couldn't patch. And I was like, oh, this isn't a patching problem. This isn't a workflow problem. I said, you have an infrastructure management problem in the management of your tech lifecycle and your application lifecycle. So there's another ServiceNow application that helps manage that. And so we actually pitched both. We said, hey, we know you need to manage the vulnerabilities, but you also need to manage your life cycles around that. And so that was what was important to me when you asked about making sure to share about business problems, that you have to listen to what people are asking for, but then also try to see past like where they're trying to get to, or what's really at the root cause of why they're asking you for those requirements or the specifications. And you oftentimes find something, an aha moment, or like, oh, you don't know to ask for this because it's not part of what you'd think about. But I've seen this before. I think you need both of these things or this other thing.
So somebody was asking, what skill sets, I guess, or what pathways would you have to know to take on a role such as yours? So obviously you have to know the fundamentals, yes, but it sounds like you have to know the platform backwards and forwards to be able to access, like you said, you were able to pinpoint what the problem was with a customer not even understanding what the problem was themselves, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I heard you as I came on and didn't have, I was still upside down. You were mentioning my video I made.
Yeah.
One of the things I say in my videos is the mantra at the end is always be learning. Yeah. And I think this is one of those roles where you can come in with no skill set. And as long as you have the appetite and the motivation to be learning the next new thing, finding the next new thing, that's the skill set that I would be after for this particular role. When I think of a developer, though, or a coder or whatever, same thing, because not to be cliche, but luck is only so much as there is preparation for when luck happens, being ready for it. And that would mean making sure you're continually learning and stretching those skill sets. So what I'm talking about platform-wise, yeah, you probably need some experience and understanding. Like maybe 4 years ago, I wouldn't have known that other application in ServiceNow to even recommend, and known enough about it to say, hey, you're looking for this. I don't need to design it for you, develop it. I'm sorry, my dog is drinking.
No, I think we can hear it. I figured.
I have a really good microphone. This happens when I'm recording on YouTube too, and I just have to wait or just power through it. But yeah, so skill sets, there's a business problem solving skill set. There's a listening and communicating skill set. I think that's a key thing, is like you can develop something really cool, but if you're not able to communicate back to that business person or the person that asked for it what exactly it does and why it's important, that's another important skill set. And then there's the technical piece. And Alex was talking about one of my videos that had to do with AI. Like, the technical piece is becoming less and less important as I grow older and as things advance in the world. So I think the technical skills are easy to obtain, but yeah, it's still, you want some fundamental knowledge to be able to kind of speak the same language at least.
And so I also mentioned that series when we started talking. I told you I love this series that you have called UI Builder Experience, and I see that as kind of like, if you're getting to know, if you're just starting off in ServiceNow, this would be a great series to follow. But you also mentioned to me, well, this is something that you were actually completing that already exists on the ServiceNow platform. That's kind of free to everybody, right? So there's all these resources for people for free who are just learning, who could go down there and just kind of follow these steps and create these really cool apps. The one I'm talking about is the recipe app that you first created. Can you tell us, like, well, aside from that, what other advice would you give someone just getting into the ServiceNow learning space? Like, how should they be learning?
Yeah, so ServiceNow is really unique, and I don't work for them. Just so I get I'm compensated directly related to them, right? So take that for what it is. But I don't work for them. They are unique in the companies that I've worked for, in that you can go right now to developer.servicenow.com, put in sign up with an email address, any email address, Gmail, Hotmail, if that's still around, whatever, email address and password, and they will give you a developer instance of ServiceNow. Now, does it come with, predictive intelligence and machine learning and some of the really expensive stuff? No, but it comes with what you're talking about, Alex, the ability to go practice, do those, follow instructions or step-by-step workflows to build something. And on that same site for developer, they have tutorials, tons of tutorials. There's my YouTube channel where I'm giving demos all the time, and other creators are giving demos about what to do. But if you literally can get in there and start playing, and when it comes to learning, there is no better way to learn than to get your feet wet and your hands dirty and actually start doing it. Like, sitting and looking at a book and documentation, great. But I'd rather be in the thing that I'm trying to do and consult that documentation. And ServiceNow is great at doing that. There's no paywall to learn and even to develop and produce something. I think there is a bit of a NDA/paywall to get in their store and do stuff. But the barrier is very low for their platform to actually start learning it and doing something in there.
I have another great question. This is coming from the crowd. This is Massimo. I don't want to mess up his name. Peroni, I believe. He asks, how do companies usually react when hearing they need to move infrastructure platforms in order to solve their security issues, like you described before?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the company. The one I was mentioning was a global manufacturing, I believe. And when I say global, I'm talking like every single country in the world they seem to have an office in. So you talk about that, they reacted like, "Why? This is crazy. Like, what is it going to take? What are we going to do?" So that can be really painful in coordinating that many people across that many time zones. Whereas other companies, they're all in. They're going to say, we'll do whatever it takes, and we're there to support you. So it runs the gamut on the reaction there. I'm kind of rereading the question. But look, security is a great example, Massimo, because when it comes to security issues, we usually have no problem finding funding to resolve security issues. That's one of those spaces where people's jobs and regulators who might impose fines are involved or in play. And that usually, even when there's hand-wringing and hesitation about doing something, they're usually motivated to do it and have the funding to do it. And that means, too, clearing the backlog of other work that you can't get done so that you can do this security work to resolve a security issue.
So I noticed, I was just perusing your LinkedIn profile before we met, which I usually do. And I noticed that you attended an event. It was called Become Your Most Inspired Brand. And I think that message, especially this year, seems to be, people have to rise above the crowd to get noticed, especially people who are trying to break into the ServiceNow space. What kinds of things would you recommend people do to stand out from the crowd, when they're trying to fight for these roles against people who have maybe 2, 3, 4 years experience? And these are considered entry-level roles. But for the people just coming out of maybe the next gen program or a boot camp with some basic ServiceNow skills, what would you recommend them do to kind of like stand out?
I want to comment on the branding thing first. In fact, that was put out by a local woman who's I've worked with in the past at my previous job at the hospital, the health system. And she's gone off and done this branding consultancy. And I was like, oh, this is really cool, because for the past year, since 2020, beginning of 2022, I've been working on my own personal brand. Like before that, the YouTube station existed. I didn't really think about myself as a brand until I got into this role and people started asking for me to do things. I'm like, oh, wait, they're asking for me, Justin. I was like, okay, wait a second. Yeah. And you're right. There's buzz around personal brand, stuff like that. So it started to make sense. To stand out, this is going to go counterfactual or counter advisory to what you might hear in podcasts, like especially business or tech podcasts, is saying yes. So when you're junior and you don't have the experience, right, on a resume to say, well, I've done this, this, and this, so I'm the most qualified. It is looking for the thing that, someone's asking for help with and no one's helping, and saying, yes, I got it, I'll do it. And watching for those opportunities. And that's where I was talking about earlier with this kind of obtaining new skills or staying fresh, is that when those come by and someone's like, hey, does anybody know ServiceNow? And like, oh yeah, I actually did that during my internship, and I don't have much experience, but nobody else does, so I'm your guy or I'm your woman. So I think that is saying yes as much as you can to gain that experience. And then when you have the experience, this is funny, the opposite's going to happen. You're going to have to learn to say no to everything that you were saying yes to at some point, because you're just going to get bogged down in a nightmare of stuff you can never get done, and that's bad for your career too, is never finishing things.
Got another question from the crowd. So thank you for your time, Justin. I have a question. Yeah. So what kind of technical writing experience do employers expect from the entry-level employee?
Not much in my experience. And in particularly in my industry now, we wish there was more technical writing experience. But honestly, if you think about technical writing, it's probably something that could be automated and scripted away, if you would, at some point, even with AI at some point. I don't see it a lot, other than sometimes as a secondary, tertiary requirement on an application. Not that I've been looking at a lot of applications lately. I haven't. So don't, please don't send me 1,000 applications where it says, hey, it's got to be technical writing experience. But I would say writing experience is probably good. The technical piece of it. Let me lean back on my pharmacy background, where I got my technical writing experience. When it was pharmacy and medications and patients, sick patients, it was drilled into me by the people I worked with, my mentors at the time, that you have to double check and document everything. And what that translated into from a technical writing perspective is everything I did, screenshot, copy paste into something to store that. So I knew, what did that look like before I did it? What did that look like after I changed it? And if something goes wrong, doesn't work, how do I go back and fix it? And that kind of evolves into a compulsory, maybe even OCD method of technical writing or documentation. But what kind of technical writing experience? I would say it's very rare to find someone to say, hey, I do technical writing for a living. I haven't run across it myself. It's usually part of your job.
So I had a question that I always ask every guest speaker. There's all of these, hot pathways everyone talks about. And, some people say, hey, HR is, that's where you want to go when you get into ServiceNow. After you get the fundamentals down, think about going the HR route, or think about going the security or SecOps route. I'm curious, what do you think are the in-demand pathways, and which one interests you moving forward?
Yeah, HR is one of those ones I haven't gravitated towards. The in-demand seems to be a lot of movement around SecOps, because of, like I said, recent security issues, national, international kind of tiffs and issues around stuff like that. So there's a lot of attention in that space. So if anybody out there is former military or understands stuff like that, go after the SecOps stuff because we need you there. Risk is another one as we kind of manage through things like the pandemic and the post stuff that's happened since. Risk has come up a lot. The other one that I also haven't touched is the environmental and social governance. That seems to be getting a lot of buzz. It seems to be mostly in maybe the Fortune 100, maybe 300, 400, not trickling down to everybody yet so much. That in ServiceNow has a space in there too, ESG. But having said that, if I were talking to myself, I'd say make sure whatever it is you're going into that you're passionate about, because there's nothing worse than saying, well, that's the hot thing, so I'm going to go after that, but you hate it, or it's not interesting, or it's dull, or it just doesn't sync or resonate with you. Then I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's worth it, because at the end of the day, you've got to be happy and find fulfillment from what you're doing. And so I would be looking for the things that get me excited. And that's what I do with my channel. That's what I do in my job. It's kind of like, oh, integration. I love integrations. Let me go tackle that.
Another question from the crowd. Just a follow-up question. Is SecOps, is that the same as cybersecurity?
Yes, sir. Yes, Emil. Security operations is what ServiceNow calls SecOps. So I'm used to referring to that way. But cybersecurity is a more all-encompassing term. And a lot of the certifications reference cybersecurity.
So what advice would you give someone just entering the space now? Pretty much all of us, right, who are just pretty much gone through the fundamentals. Maybe we got our CSA certificate. What advice would you give all of us moving forward?
Wow, just the fundamentals. Get that developer instance. And I would do as many of the tutorials or whatever. That would be my start until you feel comfortable then looking at a business problem. And you might be like, well, how do I find a business problem if I don't have a job? The ServiceNow has a community where people post problems they're having doing things, whether that's technical or they don't know the product, they don't know the right place to go for something. So that's one place you can curate business problems. The other is places like LinkedIn, Reddit. There's just so many different forums where you can kind of find people posting and asking for help, right? Those are other places where you can kind of find those. I'm fortunate in my job where they're just coming at me constantly like, hey, we need this, hey, we need that. And some of those we don't have solutions for, and I'll just toss them in the backlog and they become part of my channel at some point, or they just go there to die and I never get back to them. But the key takeaway, I guess, if you have that initial CSA or initial training, the fundamentals, is just to get in there and start. Like, what can you do? And a great example tackles no business problem whatsoever. I did with ChatGPT and DALL-E 2 in ServiceNow. Yeah, like creating really cool poems and pictures. No business problem that I know of right now does that actually help. But you're connecting the dots and you're saying, okay, I understand how the system works now. And if I did have an actual business problem, I've already figured out the technical stuff. And now I just have to rinse and repeat.
Got another question for the crowd. Let's see. One more question. I was intrigued by the governance and risk compliance. So that's the security you were talking about earlier, right? But no idea where to start. Where do you suggest a beginner learner should look at? Thank you.
Oh, man. So I'm so into that space too. It's kind of like, well, where did I start? The governance, risk, and compliance usually starts around kind of like a risk register. And so basic risk frameworks, right? So you've something happens in the organization and you kind of flag it, right? So there's, if you look at things like NIST and IST, ISO 27001, there's a couple of them. This person who asked about cybersecurity might know some of them. But there's different frameworks and publications out there that say, like, if you want to comply with NIST, for example, that all your servers must have passwords that are, of this complexity and must be changed every so often. And I'm not saying that's what it says, but an example of a publication. And the compliance piece of that is, how do I track that and ensure people are compliant? So where I would get started is being well versed in what those publications are and what organizations are trying to do to show compliance with them. I could probably give a better answer with a little bit more research on there's probably certifications and stuff like that. The one more thing that comes to mind is if you've ever been audited, you really quickly kind of get a basic understanding of that really quick, because auditors are looking at what the policy is or what the control is and how you're complying with it. And as part of being audited, you're given a boot camp into what governance, risk, and compliance is. But don't be audited if it's trying to.
Let's see, I think I got a shout out here. Let's see. I think this is Jay. So this is a gentleman, I think, that has a bunch of resources for all of those who are interested in, I guess, more. I think this is Jace Benson. He's one of the all-stars in ServiceNow. Yep. So if you're looking for more info on how to get started in ServiceNow, definitely go check out that link. Another question coming from the crowd. Let's see. What certification to pursue following CSA that's in demand or that will help with entry level? I was told that ITSM covers kind of like hits on everything and is another great, I guess, module to go through. Are there any others that you can think of or they can recommend to us?
Yeah, I think I second the ITSM one. I do want to give props to Jace because I use his site like at least almost every day of the week. So definitely check out jace.pro. And especially his newsfeed too. I love that. The ITSM is a good place to start because if you really break down the other applications in ServiceNow, they kind of follow a similar structure. Not all of them, but many of them do. So things like customer service management, legal service delivery, HR service delivery. Although they use different words and different records and tables and stuff like that, the concepts themselves are similar to ITSM. So if you've done CSA, ITSM is probably, yes, a good next place to go. And then I don't know, like, I don't want to give preference to any one thing, but if you see the direction of ServiceNow and where they're going with their platform and with their user interface, one of those things is what you were talking about at the beginning, Alex, is UI Builder. And this is something that I need to spend more time on. If I were in your shoes and I had more time on my hands, UI Builder is where I'd probably throw 50 to 60% of my time, because that's a differentiator right now. And I don't know if anybody wants to second that one, but if you were able to come in and say, hey, I know UI Builder, I can help you with your workspace. I think that would be a huge asset right now to any organization, any consulting firm, because that's where ServiceNow is taking everything and not everybody's skilled up there yet.
So what you just said may have partially answered this follow-up or this question. I assume you've interviewed folks before.
Yes.
In interviewing, what is something that the interviewee can do to blow your socks off?
Oh, wow. I've had my socks blown off many times during interviews. Geez. And I'm trying to think of those situations. Usually it's an ability to just, connect with the person who's interviewing with you and not just give rote replies or rote answers to questions. Like really thoughtfully think about, if they're asking you about that one time that you were in this situation, or tell me about where you use this particular skill, and not just coming right out with an answer and actually being thoughtful about it. And I say that it sounds simple, but usually you're nervous. You've been prepping and done a bunch of stuff and kind of researching that company even. So it's really a skill to calm down and be level-headed enough to say, okay, they asked me this, and what really is important or what's really relevant in my background. And I was thinking probably one of the most blown socks off I was in my career. I was a manager of an ITSM team at one point, and I hired interns. And the interns had no experience with anything ITSM. They're the farthest from it, right? Maybe they were a ticket creator at some point. But what I was most blown away was their ability to tap into things that there were hobbies or things that from school that were actually answered by question. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that was a good answer, but it was actually really good. So it's kind of being able to connect dots to things by thinking thoughtfully about the questions you're asked. And I could probably come up with a better answer too, but
We had a guest speaker last Friday, and we talked about soft skills. How much do you lean on those types of skills? Like you're talking about leadership, problem solving, or something having non-technical type skills that you say, wow, the fact that this person was so driven to do this, that, and the other, that really motivates me to think about this person for this role. Would you agree with that statement? Like soft skills play a big part in your decision making when it comes to who you would hire?
absolutely. I'd say 98% of my hiring decisions that I made in the past were on soft skills. I cannot train somebody in soft skills. Here we go with the water again. So that is really, really important. It is something that you have to go figure out and hone yourself. It's really not a trainable skill. I can't make a genius developer, genius coder be more empathic or be more understanding or be more open-minded. Some of those are just kind of hard-grained into people at a certain point. So you're looking for those when you're interviewing, and yeah, it's a huge part. It's a huge part in just what I find in my success in my career has been just be able to communicate, understand, listen. Sometimes just listen. Like sometimes you don't even do anything else other than just nod your head and say, "Is there more?"
I just want to give a shout out to one of our alumni, Latricia Hunter, saying they're currently having her worked on UI Builder. So obviously something very important for everybody to consider. Yeah. And another question, and this is from Viorica Bolohan. Can you please expand on UI?
Yeah, UI is abbreviation for user interface. And so ServiceNow has had several variations of the user interface over the years. I've only been part of the ecosystem since I think 2016 or 17. So I've only seen some of those and the most recent ones, but probably the one that happened beginning of last year, actually when I started doing more stuff on YouTube, was their move to what's called the next experience. And I know there's some, Jace could probably answer this better. Actually, the stack that they're using, the development stack that they're using in this next experience is very much different than what we've used in the past to do things like design user interfaces for people who are fulfilling what we call fulfillers in ServiceNow. So someone who's resolving a ticket or resolving a request or doing some kind of work in ServiceNow. And then what's coming fast on that at some point in the future, again, I don't work for ServiceNow, is the user-facing side of things. So what we call a portal where people log in and say, hey, I want to search for knowledge, or I want to, open a ticket about my my Disney subscription not working, right? So interfaces like that are public facing. All of that user interface is quickly evolving into what I think was it Latricia said, the UI builder in these configurable workspaces.
So I want to show everybody your YouTube channel, and I want everybody to see your LinkedIn, because I definitely think that if you're trying to break into the space, definitely start following this man and check out the content he already has out there. And I'm looking forward to seeing more content. I'd love for you to consider putting out more content for entry level type users. So if anybody has any suggestions for types of content they would love to see, maybe on a YouTube channel, please go ahead and drop any ideas down here, or send out a message over to this man via LinkedIn. I'm going to drop that into the chat as well. Any final words from you, Justin? I really appreciate you taking out time on your Friday to come and join us. And I'd love to see you maybe in the future to see where you've gone with your YouTube channel. Any last words for everybody today?
I'm going to end with my last words on my YouTube channel. Always be learning. That's what I'm passionate about. That's what you guys are doing right now. And since you're doing it, just develop that muscle to continue doing it, and you won't go wrong. You can't go wrong. There's always going to be something new on the horizon and something else to learn. And yeah, it might get rote or tedious over time. But again, if you go after the things that make you excited or that you're passionate about, it'll be okay. And you'll be set up for success. So just keep stretching those skills.
I really appreciate your time, Justin. Till next time, everybody have a great weekend, and see you guys next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Justin.